Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Stepping Up with me, Kendar the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. We are doing chapter 84 today. Tibs watched the cleric work. He found her in one of the workers' barracks after hearing about her going around and healing the workers who needed it. Only a handful of clerics left their quarters to work among the townsfolk. The rest only went to the dungeon's door and back. It learned that the guild's inability or unwillingness had worked out which it had been, and worked out which. To go and bring the clerics who had been caught outside of by Sebastian's siege had created a rift between the two groups. He sensed how she moved the essence through the woman's injury, the shape she gave it, how much she thought she used, and where she concentrated the essence within the wound. She was healing a man with burns on his arm. They weren't from a fire. Tibs could identify those by the way the essence of those burns felt afterwards, the way they'd been eaten away. He'd reached a point with purity where he had its influence under control, and he wanted to figure out how to heal someone. He wished he could go to her or another of the clerics and ask how she did it. But even if she had shown herself to be more like the runners than any of the other clerics, he didn't trust her with his secret. He wondered if she had a sense of her patient's essence the way he did. From the discussion, his friend, mainly Karina, he knew none of them sensed anything of the other's essence within their bodies, even when it was the same element. People did not register as having essence to them other than through the color of their eyes. But clerics worked closer to people than anyone else, worked with the essence flowing through them. Or that was how it felt to Tibs. Did she? Or did she use the burn on the arm she was healing to guide where she sent the essence? How did clerics work with injuries that left no clues on the body they existed? She noticed them. Hello. She looked thinner than when Tibs had last seen her at the inn, before she and the others had been taken back to the guild hall by a high-ranking cleric. She patted the man on the cot, on the shoulder. You'll be fine. But next time you work with Lai, make sure you wear proper protection. The man wasn't fully healed. The burns on his arms were less intense, but still present, as were the injuries of the others in the room. The cleric's essence was thin. If he hadn't known her to be at least raw, he'd think she'd only just reach up so long. It was how the other runner's essence drained. It was how the other runner's essence drained. Essence drain registered to him. She staggered as she stood in his car. Thank you. You look exhausted. She gave him a strange smile. Exhaustion is the price of hard work. She looked at the man and women and thought, it's a price it's a price I gladly pay to help these people. Exhaustion could kill, he nearly told her, but remembered the demand purity put on clerics. It wasn't like other elements whose influence wasn't even wasn't like with the runners, whose influence wasn't even certain, and she wasn't like him, who could choose not to channel it before he gained control over the influence. Some clerics, he thought of Hightower, seemed to have found ways around the aspect of the influence they didn't like, but she gladly gave in to all of them. Then let me treat you to food and drink to repay your hard work. You don't have to. I know, but I'd like to. He smiled. If you want, you can consider it payment for answering some questions. All right. The tavern, a few buildings from the workers' barrack, was called the Tired Ale, and it was busier than Tibs expected. Before he could offer they go to a different one, workers noticed them and stood from a small table. They thanked her profusely, and to Tibs' amusement, didn't seem to know who he was. Before he could head to the bar, a server brought each a tankard and he ordered them a meal. I was wondering why you stayed to help during the siege, he asked, doing his best to keep his tone casual. In the early days, it would have been easy to make it to the guild building I suspect you don't understand how chaotic the early days were, she replied with a smile. But I didn't try to. Few of us did. There was work for us to do there. She thanked the harried server who brought them each a bowl of stew and bread. I found that Purity's urges to work is a good way to placate those who think they make decisions for it. The stew was watery, the meat stringy, and the vegetables mush. He considered complaining, but noticed the relish with which she ate, and he realized he'd become spoiled by the quality of the food in the insert. If he wasn't careful, he might start demanding that any place he stepped in met his exacting standard, just like nobles did. I'm glad you did, but one of the reasons I was surprised to see you there is that I thought you were going to kill yourself trying to purify the pool of corruption. She looked up from her bowl, so pale eyes wide, and studied his face. You were the boy, she smiled, the one who spoke to me, the one who is street. Her smile fell. Her smile fell. I had what that means explained to me. I'm sorry you lived such a hard life. Hard work is one thing, but to be in an institution where being sent to a dungeon seems liberating. I'm glad you're still among us, and I see your eyes are blue now. I grew into it, he replied casually. Why did you stop? I was forbidden from returning to that place. A flat response, and how she immediately went back to eating stopped Tibs from pressing. And it didn't matter. This was his curiosity sidetracking him. What is it like to heal someone? He sighed in pleasure. To help those in need is a pleasure beyond any, one I don't get enough chance to feel. How do you do it? He asked before he could stop himself. She eyed him with a mix of amusement and suspicion. I'm afraid that without purity, and without being a cleric, you wouldn't understand. He shrugged. I don't understand. I don't understand a lot of things. Well, that's why I ask so many questions. My teacher says it's a good thing. Others don't always agree. He filled his palm with water. All I need to do is gather my essence to make that happen. Even making the water flow is more about moving the essence than shaping it. The water lifted over his hand, molding into a small blade. This is just me holding the essence so it won't spread away. He realized the tavern was silent. The workers were watching them with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Adventurers are something they'd only hear of in stories, she said. Magic isn't something any of them expect to see this close. But the town's full of runners. She smiled. How many of them come to this part of the town? If they do, will they show what they are? Just looked at the worker's face, the awe, the fear, the suspicion. He knew those expressions, had warned them himself back before he came to Craggle Rock. He hadn't avoided this area, or at least not on purpose, he told himself. The town was growing ever larger, so how could he visit all of them? He was reminded that Samuel knew more of the town than he did now. Hadn't he prided himself on knowing every roof and alleys at one time? Would this place become a street? Was Tib taking part in making that happen simply by not paying attention to it? He was the one looking after the town. There had to be something he could do to make sure there never was a street in Craggle Rock. Am I breaking a rule? He asked the server as she stared at the water floating over his hand. One thing he could do was make sure he didn't simply trample over how things were done in the tavern. She startled, then looked worried. There ain't no rules, a man said, dressed in the heavy and worn clothing of the workers. Just never see water do that before. Can you ask the owner? Just asked the server. If they say I have to stop, I will. That man did not look like he was in charge here. She nodded and stepped away. Tibs iced the small blade, focusing on keeping it smooth, and ended with fewer jagged points than usual. But the gasp from the crowd could have been fear as much as surprise. Considered what he did to make it happen before speaking. Making it do that just needs me to push the essence into a simple structure. It's just interlocking the essence, really, but even then, I can't get it to do exactly what I want. So making the weapon look terrifying to anyone facing you isn't your goal? She asked, smiling. Tibs chuckled. This is the least threatening I can make it. He looked around, and I think it's more because of how small I made it. She lost her smile. A weapon will always be threatening to someone facing it. That's not what I meant. I mean that her expression didn't soften and he tried again. I just think he melted the small blade into a pool of water. I guess being a runner makes me feel different about the things I need to use to survive. She nodded. But a demonstration like this only serves to remind them you are more powerful than they are. And you need to remember that those with power often show that power to people. That power often show that power so people will fear them. Tibs absorbed the water and looked at the table. What I do, she continued, and he looked up at her, and I am not particularly skilled at yet, is much the same as you did. Telling the essence into a fabric is the best analogy, and apply that to the wound. That's it? He asked, surprised. He hadn't felt that kind of structure to what she did. To him, it had felt like nothing more than the essence moving through the injuries to reach the place where the man's essence had been affected, and that had caused the injury to heal. I thought there was more to it. The way the clerics act when healing us at the dungeon door makes it seem more involved. It can be, she replied after thinking. There, runners have graver injuries, but what I did is simply apply the patch to the wound. The essence is then drawn in deeper, pulled to what needs healing the most until it's all used up. Tibs nodded as part of what each sense became clearer. That's why you're so tired. You can't pull the essence back into you the way I did. She nodded. A man wearing a grease-covered apron approached him nervously. Milady said you needed to talk to me. He was heavy-set, with badly shorn copper hair. Tibs was taken aback by the caution in the man's expression. I just asked her to find out if you had rules against using essence here. I was giving. He hesitated and was stunned to realize that even after multiple times she'd healed him during the siege, he'd never asked her name. My friend did demonstration so I could explain how I use it, and it caused more of a reaction than I expected. Oh no, the tavern owner urged to say. I'd never think to keep one of you, adventure type, from doing anything. I'm a runner, Tibs corrected, but it didn't calm the man. Is anyone with essence magic health problems around here? Oh no, not since those first guards left. The cleric looked at Tibs quizzically. When we were brought here at the start, he told her, we were the first ones ever to run this dungeon. The guild used adventurers as guard. It was a form of punishment for rules they'd broken. They didn't like being here and didn't do a great job of guarding us, unless it was to make those who tried to escape pay. They were sent away after he pushed Bardic's memory down, after the dungeon was attacked. He looked at the crowd, at the tavern owner. Can you do something for me? The man nodded, swallowed, and grabbed grabbing the edge of his apron nervously. My name is Tibs. You're light fingers, the man hurried to say. We all know who you are. You saved the dungeon. You helped Dawn protect the town. Please, Dawn came first, he confronted himself. Still, came first. The sorcerer wouldn't hound him for trying to steal his fame. The cleric raised an eyebrow to him. Was that because they knew him or how he'd saved the dungeon? He'd explain that later and somewhere with fewer people to overhear. I want you to pass the word that if anyone uses magic to cause trouble around here, I want to know about it. Leave word with any of the servers at Fernand's Inn, and I'll be told. He wasn't letting anyone take advantage of the people just because they have to. I'm not sure you should do that, Checo said, lying on a cot in an unused section of the building after the server and Carino had laid him on it, and Tibs approached, doing his best not to show his eagerness. Jekyll had won the pit fight, but the victory had come at a cost. The bone poked out of his calf. Tibs had no idea how the fighter wasn't screaming in pain right now. I warned you this would have happened, must have said, if you took on that fight. Isn't he always getting hurt in this place? Carino asked, pulling a crate closer for Tibs to sit on. Oh, those I don't mind. Joseph patted Jekyll's arm. When he gets hurt, I get to cuddle him. Oh, Jekyll whined, blushing. Oh, you love it. I'm a tough fighter. Jekyll protested. See, I'm not even screaming in excruciating pain right now. Me melting under your cuddling is something no one other than you needs to know about. I have an image to keep. Let's chuckle that. Tibs' chuckle died partway as he channeled purity, and frivolity seemed like a waste of time. Pushed the feeling to the side and drew essence out and shaped it into what he thought of a fabric. He'd asked the tailor about them, and then he'd destroyed an old shirt to study how the filament went over and under. What I told him, Joseph said, was that the next time he got seriously hurt, Tibs got to practice on him. And Aru has been bragging about how much training he's been getting in with that convict. Stop pouting. I'll tell you once Tibs is done. I'll even do that thing. Can you not talk about that while I'm trying to concentrate? Tibs asked. Fighting against throwing up isn't going to help me heal, Jackal. One of these days, Tibs, Jackal said, chuckling. You really want me to screw this up, don't you? So he had the essence woven into something resembling the fabric he studied. He wouldn't want to wear something made like that, all the fraying ends, but it would pass as fabric. Of course not, Tibs, Jekyll said, but this is where you shut up, love, and let Tibs do his thing. He smiled at the fighter. Of course, Tibs wasn't the one who'd be wearing his essence version of fabric, and Jackal kept talking about how much punishment he could take, so he could handle a little bit of healing. Even Tibs got it a little bit wrong, right? Tibs, Jekyll said wearily, I really don't like the look on your face. And this concludes chapter 84 of Stepping Up. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to read the story, you can do that on Royal Road for free. If you want to read further ahead, it's on my Patreon, where you can get a few weeks ahead. And if you want to listen to me do these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.